Imagine you're alone at sea, late at night. The engine is off. The water is completely black, and there's nothing around you for miles. Then you hear a voice, not a whale call, not a splash, a voice, something that sounds almost human, coming from somewhere beneath the surface. You look over the side, nobody's there. You listen again. And that's when you realize something is watching you from the water. That sounds like a horror movie. But the disturbing part is that marine mammals really have produced sounds close enough to human speech that researchers didn't just listen to them, they recorded them. They tested them. And in several cases, they were able to demonstrate that the animals were actually imitating sounds they had heard. These weren't parrots in a living room. They were marine mammals with completely different anatomy from ours. And yet some of them learned to reproduce sounds made by humans. Here are 3 of the most remarkable documented cases. Number 3. Hoover. New England Aquarium, Boston. In the early 1970s, a young harbor seal named Hoover was rescued as a pup after being found abandoned on the coast of Maine. He was brought to the aquarium. For years, nothing unusual happened. Hoover was just a seal that barked like any other seal. No words, no imitation. Then, around age 5, as Hoover reached sexual maturity, staff started noticing something they hadn't trained him to do. Hoover became famous for something nobody expected from a seal: his voice. Aquarium staff discovered he could produce sounds that sounded remarkably human. He became known for phrases such as, "Hello there, how are you?" and "Come over here." People who heard him described a voice surprisingly like a human man with a New England accent. There was no hidden speaker, no human behind the enclosure. The seal was producing the sound. Listen carefully. Your brain immediately tries to interpret that sound as a person, but Hoover was a harbor seal, and that's what makes his case so fascinating. There's no evidence he understood those phrases the way a human would. What he'd learned was the sound itself. After being exposed to human speech, he was reproducing aspects of it with his own vocal system. That's called vocal learning. And it's surprisingly rare in the animal kingdom. Most animals have a limited repertoire of vocalizations. Animals capable of vocal learning can modify their sounds after hearing sounds from others. Hoover became one of the most famous marine mammal examples of this ability. But Hoover wasn't the only marine mammal capable of crossing that line. The next case involved a beluga whale, and this time a human actually thought another human was speaking. Number 2. Nock. In the 1980s, researchers working with a male beluga whale named Nock noticed something unusual. Nock had spent much of his life around humans, frequently exposed to human voices, including divers working near his enclosure. Belugas are sometimes called the canaries of the sea for their extraordinary vocal range. They produce clicks, whistles, and chirps, but Nock began producing something different. Sounds that reminded researchers of human speech. Then came the moment that revealed where those sounds were coming from. A diver surfaced from Nock's enclosure and asked his colleagues, "Who told me to get out?" Nobody had. The sound had come from the whale. Nock was producing a sound resembling out. Researchers began recording his unusual vocalizations. They found the rhythm and acoustic characteristics were much closer to human speech than to his normal beluga calls. Listen carefully. That isn't a person speaking underwater. It's a beluga whale, and that's exactly why the recording is so strange. Your brain is built to recognize voices. So when a sound carries the characteristics of human speech, your first instinct is to search for a human source. In Nock's case, there wasn't one. There was a whale. Humans produce speech using structures including the larynx. Belugas don't. They produce sound through their nasal system. Researchers found Nock was changing how he normally produced sound, using unusually high pressure and altering his nasal structures to create speech-like vocalizations. He wasn't learning English, he wasn't holding a conversation, but he could hear human sounds and modify his own production to resemble them. The findings were published in Current Biology in 2012, confirming that the resemblance wasn't simply in listeners' imaginations. There was a measurable acoustic phenomenon. And if that sounds impressive coming from a beluga, wait until you hear what an orca managed to do. Wiki. Marine land in Antibes, France. A female orca named Wiki was already trained to respond to a copy command. Researchers wanted to know how far that ability could go. Could she imitate sounds she'd never produced before, including sounds made by humans? In 2018, researchers tested her with a series of unfamiliar sounds. Some came from other orcas, some came from humans. Wiki was asked to copy sounds such as "Hello, Amy," and "1, 2, 3." She was also presented with non-human sounds, including a creaking door, and she successfully produced recognizable copies of several of them. Then came another test. It doesn't sound exactly like a human. It doesn't need to. What matters is what Wiki was doing. She was modifying her own vocal production to approximate a sound she'd heard. There was no evidence that she understood what hello meant, and this is already remarkable. Wiki was 14 years old when the experiment was. Young orcas learn sounds from members of their social group, so some of their vocal behavior isn't simply instinctive, it is learned. Wiki's experiment took that ability into completely unfamiliar territory. Instead of copying another orca, she copied us. Were they actually talking? No, and this distinction matters. None of these three animals demonstrated human language. There's no evidence Hoover, Nock, or Wiki understood English the way humans do. They weren't secretly holding conversations with their trainers. And there's no scientific evidence that wild whales are deliberately calling out to sailors, pretending to be human. The real discovery is different, and in some ways more fascinating. These animals demonstrated vocal learning. The ability to hear a sound, remember it, and modify their own production to make something similar. That's very different from language. But it's rare and sophisticated. Only a small number of species are known to possess it. And that makes these marine mammals particularly interesting. Their ancestors evolved completely different sound production systems from ours, yet some independently learned to reshape what they produce. There's another reason to be careful with stories about mysterious voices at sea. The human brain is extremely good at finding familiar patterns in unfamiliar sound, especially voices. This is known as auditory pareidolia. The ocean is full of strange sounds that travel enormous distances underwater. And unfamiliar animal calls can sound remarkably strange to human ears. So not every reported voice at sea is evidence of an unknown creature. But that's what makes these documented cases so fascinating. We don't need legends. We don't need fishermen's stories. We have recordings, acoustic analysis. And, in Wiki's case, a controlled experiment. A harbor seal really did produce remarkably human-like sounds. A beluga really did produce speech-like vocalizations that confused a diver. An orca really did imitate hello and 1, 2, 3. None of them were speaking English, but all three learned to reproduce sounds that originated from another species entirely. And that raises a bigger question. If marine mammals can learn to imitate human voices, how much more are they capable of learning that we haven't discovered yet? The ocean is enormous, and most of it remains difficult for humans to observe. There are animals living hundreds or thousands of meters below the surface that we rarely see. Some produce sounds we can hear. Others communicate at frequencies far beyond our hearing, in ways we still don't understand. So somewhere in the ocean, there may be sounds being produced right now that we've never recorded. Not necessarily a hidden monster. Not necessarily a creature imitating a human. But something we simply don't understand yet, because the real mystery isn't whether animals can sound like us. We already know they can. The real mystery is how far that ability goes. The ocean has been making sounds for millions of years. We've only recently learned how to listen. And somewhere beneath the surface, something may be making a sound we've never heard before. We just haven't found it yet.